Welcome to the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, where we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade, focused on student support and digital experience. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology who will be bringing you their perspectives on how digital transformation is reshaping the way we recruit, engage, and graduate learners. You'll hear firsthand accounts of how institutional leaders are developing their strategy, as well as get deeper on the stories of how these EdTech tools are being built to foster better student outcomes. With that, let's get to today's episode. Hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 332, with Michael Betz of Covista. We are talking with him about how his group of institutions are leveraging their partnership with Google Cloud to really drive forward the healthcare workforce of the future, learning about AI and keeping all the student experiences as supportive and relevant, acknowledging how kind of digital transformation is impacting what we're teaching about and how we're teaching and just how colleges operate. Really grateful for Michael giving some of his time talking about the important work that him and his team are doing across all the institutions in the network of Covista. Please do enjoy this episode number 332 with Michael Betz. Something that I've wanted to explore more on the show is the continuing sort of workforce gaps when it comes to healthcare professions. There's folks really committed and working in this space in a bunch of different kind of perspectives we're going to be confronting and interfacing with for our episode today. But Michael, if you want to kick us off, as we always do, briefly introduce yourself and your background, then we'll get in more to the work that Covista does and some recent cool announcements and things that you all are working on.
Thank you so much for having me. So yeah, Michael Betz. I work at Covista. We're the nation's largest healthcare educator and focused exactly on addressing this huge workforce gap that we have in healthcare. We own 5 accredited universities. So we have Chamberlain University, the nation's largest nursing school. We have a Ross Medical and AUC as our medical schools, Ross Veterinary, and then Walden University, which is one of the leading online universities, again, focused on healthcare and mental health professionals. I have a couple roles at Covista. So I'm the president of Walden University. But in addition to that, I run all of technology and AI efforts as well as marketing for all of Covista. Prior to Covista, I've spent most of my career in education. In fact, started as a Teach for America teacher, as a third grade bilingual teacher in LA many years ago. I think I was in maybe the second cohort of Teach for America. And since then have had the opportunity to work in technology and education. I was a partner at McKinsey and did a great deal of my work at the firm was with education clients, and then also time at Lucian and some other education organizations.
Yeah, very good. And it was kind of funny. Teach for America kind of just like trickles in a lot, just like people's background in some form or another, and a couple other heavy hitters there in your background, which is I've got quite the pedigree and coming into kind of the work here in Covista. And I think it's one of those things that's interesting is sometimes just either the kind of the organizing bodies or kind of the folks, the organizations that power the work of like, I was vaguely familiar with Walden University, but just generally, I think I appreciate the folks who are working, as Covista seems to be, of the sort of networked approach. There can be, just greater efficiencies or effectiveness when institutions come together and, share resources or, that. So just talk more about that, I guess, the kind of intricacies of work that Covista does, and I guess how it involves all the institutional members of your broader group there.
Yeah, no, we are very fortunate, right? We have close to 100,000 students across our institutions. And because of that scale, and because, as you said, we can take on big technology projects, big student success projects, data and analytics efforts across those 5 institutions, allows us to make investments that any one institution would be challenged to make by itself, right? Whether we're talking about predictive analytics to help ensure that we're supporting our students and reaching out to them with the right information at the right time. We'll be talking more about some of the AI tools that we're developing. And then just honestly, at the end of the day, it's still about people. And so making sure that we are sharing best practices around how we support students, how we teach students, how we prepare them for the workforce across our institutions. And we think that's something that really benefits everybody that's part of one of our universities.
We've had a couple folks speak to our governing bodies of a collection of institutions. And it is an idea of like it really does provide a lot of benefits across the board, where sometimes like we've explored where it's just around like staffing and HR and benefits and whatever, just in this like larger body that can negotiate things or whatever else. But then across the student experience, there's certain things, and the kind of segue to like in AI powered tools at certain points, like it costs what it costs, and it could be hard for a smaller institution to really kind of justify that expenditure. But yeah, it's relatively recent news, I think, as of certainly the recording of this, but for folks listening, Covista and Google Cloud announced a development of an AI-powered classroom. So I'm curious to kind of hear it from your perspective and straight from you, just share more about this, what it is, and what makes it so important.
We really believe that AI, used properly and governed the right way, can be a huge benefit to supporting our students while they're at our universities, but also very much as if we prepare them the right way for their careers when they leave. And we have two partnerships with Google Cloud. The first one that actually predates the Google Classroom was and is around developing 12 certificates where we help prepare our students for how to use AI in different career fields, whether it's nursing or medicine, whether it's in mental health professions or business and education that we teach at Walden, so that when they go into the workforce, they're prepared to not just be fluent in how AI can help them be better clinicians or help them drive efficiencies in their organizations, but they can actually be leaders in that. And so those that, we'll talk more about that, but we've had a great response to that. Over 5,000 students in the first 2 weeks signed up for our first 3 certificates, and we still have 9 to go. But the Google Classroom that you mentioned, we're really excited about, is fundamentally the idea here is that we have talked about personalized education for, 40, 50 years. We were talking about it when I was a third grade teacher in Los Angeles, and I had 36 kids with very different skills and capabilities, but we just could never do it, right? It was cost prohibitive, right, to have the staffing that you need to do that. But with what we're doing with Google, we think we actually have a solution for that, that by integrating AI tools into that digital classroom experience, we actually can deliver exactly the right content to students based on what they're struggling with and what they're mastering. And then we can do some amazing things to help them learn in different formats, literally hit a button and turn an article into a video, hit a button and create 5 flashcards to help remember different topics, be able to nudge our students where they might need to be boning up a little bit more on a skill. And we're still in the prototype phase with this. Our belief is we want to spend a lot of time with our students and our faculty to make sure we get it right before we roll it out. But the early results that we're getting and hearing from our students and faculty is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I think it is that idea of, announcing intentions or collaborations and all that and kind of manifesting it. And it's like, in some ways, I feel like folks do that just for like accountability. Hey, we're committing, we're doing this is how we're doing it. And also just is influential when big players make big plays like this. It's sort of higher ed, being the field that I'm most familiar with, there is a tag-along effect on bandwagon when big players are making these kind of commitments. That's an indication of like permission, I guess, sometimes from institutions like, oh, are we going to be like the one who sticks our neck out there and be like, hey, we're doing all this AI stuff and whatever. But yeah, I think I've been just really impressed now I'm like thinking about it is like that Google has integrated AI sort of like everywhere and sort of their suite of tools and just the idea of, like however you want to use it, like it's there, it's right there and you can just kind of start playing with it. So I guess just as a brief follow-up, like as much as you can speak to it, like the idea of putting emphasis there, I guess it is obviously just the core experience of like the quote unquote product of higher education is like you're signing up to take courses to get credit to get a credential and everything. Was that sort of the thought process of like, let's kind of start with the core and then maybe start to kind of branch out from there of like how can we maybe then sort of any insights to then leverage AI to kind of impact other parts of the student experience?
We think there's 3 big ways that AI is going to be able to support our students, right? So we talked about the first, which is if we prepare them with the right skills in terms of being able to use AI effectively and responsibly in their workforce, that helps give them an edge. It helps our healthcare providers out there. So that's one area that's critical.
All right, time for a quick break to share something big happening this summer. If you're tired of the same old conference buzz and want real playbooks and real momentum, you need to make it to Charlotte, North Carolina for Engage Summit 2026, this June 15th to the 17th. Engage Summit is where you can take the next step toward building the agentic campus. with strategies you can start implementing today, workshops that sharpen your skills, and a community dedicated to transforming how higher ed supports and serves students. Whether you lead enrollment, student success, marketing, or tech, this is where higher ed stops talking about AI and starts implementing it. And the best part? Enrollify listeners like you can grab a ticket for 50% off. Yes, half off. Head to engage.element451.com and use code DUSTIN50. That's DUSTIN50. Register now and build what's next. Now, let's get back to the show.
The second, which is everything that surrounds the classroom, we serve a lot of working adult students. We're a broad access university. We pride ourselves on taking students that a lot of the very selective institutions turn away. And in many cases, those students need more support than your traditional 18-year-old student from an affluent household. And in our advising and our student success teams, we've been using AI and advanced analytics for a while to support that. And then we get to, like you said, then the core of that experience, which is teaching and learning. And as I said, I think we are going to be quite transformative there. Now, I think the thing to remember is the way that we view this is a force multiplier for our faculty. So this isn't about doing what we've always done and trying to substitute AI for part of what faculty members do. Instead, it's to give them a superpower, being able to do that personalized content at scale, being able to do really great tutoring and skill mastery at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday night when we might not have a tutor available. And then our faculty members can really then focus on building the relationships with the students and then support and providing some of that personalized support that some of our students might need. And to get that right is not easy. And so, in fact, you mentioned that AI has a cost, and some of it's the technology cost for sure, and there's no doubt about that. But really, what we found, it's the cost of kind of iterations and, hey, we tried some, it didn't quite work. Let's iterate, do it again. And just working through that process, it's not easy, but when you get it right and you commit yourself to getting it right for the students and the faculty, it's really powerful. But it takes time, it takes money, it takes resources. And again, that's where between the partnership with Google and the amazing learning tools they can bring to the game that we could never develop on our own, and just our commitment and scale, we're really optimistic we can bring all the pieces together.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, there's just like things there around like the time, like sometimes just institutional leaders are, for better or worse, just like really looking for short-term wins or something where it's like, hey, if we do an AI thing, like we'll just immediately have all this like increase in enrollment or something, or, whatever else, or like cost savings. You mentioned in passing the healthcare credentials and everything and really bringing in healthcare AI kind of oriented credentials. So just kind of start, or reiterate your all's approach to these like healthcare credentials and certificates and different things like that, like your vision certainly for the healthcare credentials.
Look, I think it's rooted in our mission to help solve the crisis we have in terms of healthcare worker shortages. And about, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, we launched a big survey with Gallup, the Care Monitor, and we surveyed healthcare leaders on a whole number of topics, including AI. And one of the things that we learned from that was pretty stark was we heard two things. First of all, that over 70% of healthcare leaders, clinical leaders, believe that AI could be an important part of the solution, not the solution, but a part of the solution in terms of addressing some of the staffing shortages that we have. But at the same time, almost 60% of them said that their staff just wasn't ready to use and apply a lot of these new AI tools. And so for us, that's where it started. And so when we looked for a partner, like you said, we were really drawn to Google because they have been investing in learning tools, right? So whether it's Notebook LLM, their guided learning models, perfect fit for us. And the goal there is to make sure that when our folks graduate as a nurse or a doctor, a social worker, a counselor, that they of course have all the great skills that they need to do that, but they also are fluent in how AI is being used in those fields. So that one, they can be a voice of responsibility and say, hey, let's use it the right way, but also then be innovators and be working with their healthcare system, their employers, to think of innovative ways that AI can help their patients, help deliver better care. And we just couldn't be more excited. So we got the first three out, a general AI competency kind of certificate, one in nursing, one in medicine. And like I said, in the first few weeks, we've had already 5,000 students and alums sign up for this. And we still have 9 to go. We have our other disciplines that will be ready in June, so in a couple months, and getting great feedback from folks. And of course, now we're also integrating all this directly into the curriculum as well. But we think this is something that, again, is win-win. It gives our students a leg up as they try to advance their careers, and it helps our healthcare partners as they're addressing some of the challenges that they're facing today.
You are really earnestly choosing to make a pretty concerted effort in establishing specific credentials and different healthcare disciplines and all that. Just drawing that juxtaposition, like why you felt like that was an important way to go about this.
I think part of what you said is it's just a great way for our students to signal to their future employer that they are interested in AI, that they have the basic fluencies and then some, and then the actual skills that they're going to need. And every day there are new and interesting use cases of AI in healthcare. So when they go in, they're going to be aware of those and help lead those. But I think also, like you said, it's also, it hopefully, signals our commitment at Covista that this is not just something on the side or some small thing, that we really do believe, like I said, across those 3 areas, whether it's student support, whether it's teaching and learning, and then kind of career skills, we think this is pretty transformative. I kind of came of age during the early days of the internet, and I remember back to some of the first online courses. And back then they took a textbook and they photocopied it and called it a online course. But since then, online courses become so much richer. And I think that's on the Google partnership in the classroom. That's our goal, is to go beyond just throwing a chat bot in the classroom and calling it a day, right? It's actually thinking about how can we reimagine that learning experience that takes advantage of the full power of AI to create something hopefully better and richer than what happened before. And I think we're going to look back and see that the teaching, that AI is going to end up being a bigger kind of transformation, revolution, whatever you want to call it, than even what online learning did, 20, 25 years ago. But it's going to be a lot of trial and error along the way. And we figure if we start first and we make a commitment, we're not going to get everything right away, but we're going to learn faster. We're going to build the capabilities, and we're going to be able to advance things hopefully very quickly.
I guess it is, like the idea of, even you as an institution, as a whole organization, putting out a signal to kind of indicate something, and then it being this sort of more fuller force effort than, some institutions and organizations are like maybe doing nothing or barely anything, or maybe very weak or half-hearted kind of endorsements, or like, you can do whatever you want, we're allowing it, it's just like open season. This episode is really capturing for me like the 2 big things that folks are facing with is like teaching with AI and teaching about AI, like 2 things we kind of have to like sort out of like how are we going to approach those things. And you all are, just going at it and doing it on both fronts. And I think that's really great. Again, just so much of that idea of some sort of institutional player in our space right now, kind of making these investments and blazing that trail, and folks can then follow behind and kind of learn, that's always there's a benefit of our space, I think, is folks kind of do show and tell and collaborate and, talk at conferences and all those sort of things.
Definitely a shiny object syndrome out there too, right? I think that was our other commitment. Was there's some institutions out there in higher ed, outside higher ed, says we have 150 pilots. And to me, it's hard to believe that anybody could do 150 things really well. And so I think that's the other thing that we're trying to communicate, is that we're going to focus on the things that really matter for our students, really matter for our faculty. Our strategy is as much about what we don't do than what we do, and focus on and try to double down on. And like you said, so that we can work through all the challenges and hopefully get it right sooner than later.
Yeah, because I think even some of the early headlines I remember seeing was like some institutions just being like, we're giving every student like a ChatGPT license, and a whatever. And it's like, and then what? Like that is like the kind of below the kind of grabby headline. You would hope that there's like more to it. But then I think that's like people kind of start to chatter about. And I think, now having these sort of thoughtful, well laid out kind of plans, again, that's where people I think can kind of, just have more to grab onto and follow behind and adapt to their sort of institutional context. As we're winding down, I'd be excited to hear the question that we ask pretty much all of our guests. Take it as you will. Advice that you would give to other higher ed leaders navigating this moment.
I would say there's a lot that's new, but there's a lot that doesn't change. And what I mean by that is, look, the technology is advancing every day, and you really do have to invest in keeping up with that, or in our case, just hitching your wagon to a great partner or great partners. We actually have a number of partners outside of Google as well that can help us keep on the leading edge. But what doesn't change is how you actually have impact with this, right? Because just having a technology, as you well know, doesn't do anything. It's how do you integrate it into the workflow? How do you integrate it into how we support students and faculty teach? And how do we prepare our students and give them the skills that they need? In many cases, it's not the technology that holds us back. It's building consensus. It's, as I said, iterating as we learn. And I think if you put those two things together, right, be aspirational about what these technologies can do for our students, but also remember that just having a technology doesn't do anything by itself. I think you put those two things together, I think we're going to accomplish some great things as a field in higher ed, and hopefully make more students successful, and also help make sure that our healthcare providers and others have a workforce that can be successful.
I think it's a perfect place to end, really acknowledging, 'cause it sometimes comes in because I ask about it specifically, but other times it just finds its way in, and it's an important thing to acknowledge the sort of change management piece, the building consensus, and, with folks getting feedback and being transparent, all that good, important stuff. Great place to end the episode, and we'll have ways to connect with you and Covista in the episode description, but thanks so much for taking time to chat with me.
Yeah, so nice to meet you, and thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Geek podcast. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. So be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.